Welcome back to the Goonerverse podcast, everyone. Wow, do we have a lot of news to go through. A lot of it's actually to do with other clubs, but it impacts Arsenal in some way, shape or form. A lot of it is injury related. We'll look ahead to Everton. We've got so much to talk about. Sheroy, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good. A little bit worse for where I had my work Christmas party last night, as I was telling you, but it could have been a lot worse, right? Because it finished at around midnight. And a few of the younger colleagues were like, "Hey, listen, we're going over to Lucky Voice on Chancery Lane, bit of karaoke, a few drinks. Look, I've done that before, and I know how that goes." So I said, "You know what? I'm going home." And the whole way home, I'm sat there, just craving my late night McDonald's order, my McDonald's cheat meal after a few drinks. I always have the same thing, right? So I order it when I'm about 10 minutes away from home, hoping that it arrives in time. Next thing I know, bro, it's 5:30 in the morning, and I wake up with the lights on in my bedroom and like 5 missed calls from the driver. I was just so tired that I'd gone to sleep. So I'm like, hold on. I'm like, what's going on here? And then I just I'm up at that point. So I go to the porch, open my door, and the lovely fellow has left my order there. So I decided to make a night of it anyway. And I had my McDonald's and then go back to bed. It was wonderful. That was my morning, bro. There's a story of the week for you. Slightly delayed Mackie.
Okay, so but I've got two questions here. Yeah. Firstly, wasn't that a bit grim? Like it's cold. Like the thing with the Mackies, right? I love Mackies. I think it's like the gold standard for fast food. But you got to eat that within 10 minutes of it being given. I mean, even when it arrives at the door and it's a delivery, it's still lost something. You got to have it in store immediately. Like, so how was it?
I wasn't letting anything defeat me, bro.
I hear that.
I've been looking forward to it the whole drive home, and I probably was dreaming about it in my sleep. I literally just sat there in my tuxedo and murked off that Mackey's and then changed and went back to bed. But look, I'm pretty happy with it. What was your second question?
What's your Mackey's order?
You're gonna laugh. It's outrageous. Bear in mind, this is after a few drinks when I just really want to eat everything under the sun. Yeah, so I get the McSpicy with cheese. I get a double cheeseburger, and that's only because they don't do the triple cheeseburger anymore. I get 9 nuggets, large fries, and a Tropicana. That's nice. And I yam it all in about 10 minutes flat. No,
strong. I'm a Big Mac, no gherkins, 9 nuggets.
Oh, I love the gherkins. Why'd you get rid of the gherkins? They're so good.
I just don't. It's not for me. I know. I like gherkins like chopped up in a burger sauce, but I don't like a full like slimy gherkin. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like not. So yeah, and then a Coke. A McDonald's Coke is elite. Like I've been actually drinking a lot more Coke Zero recently in my life, but if I go to Mackey's, I still feel like I need the full shebang. It's just an experience.
This is just making me hungry again. What the hell?
I know. I just ate before this pod. So yeah, sorry to everyone listening to this who's just got hungry. Look, what we can't do is a podcast. Actually, I was going to ask you this: best Mackies you've had around the world?
India, bro.
Really?
They've got this thing like back in the day when I used to go anyway. It was called the Maharaja Mac. Like it just absolutely slaps. International fast food is different level. Like international KFC, bro. They've got like spicy chicken skin in other countries. Like it's nuts, bro. The variety when you travel is insane.
Okay, so the best KFC I've had was in Budapest.
Ah, all right. There you go.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I was going to say that we can't, as a podcast, obviously give you guys access to McDonald's around the world, but we can give you access to surfing around the world. NordVPN are back, people. I know. I was working.
Nice segue.
It's a nice little segue. What's there to tell you? And please don't skip ahead. I know some of you are going, right, yeah, I've heard. No, listen. Just listen for a second. This is important. We'll keep it brief. It's a virtual private network. You all know what a VPN is at this point. You can watch content around the world. You can use the app to surf as if you're surfing the web from different locations, which you select from the NordVPN app. It is brilliant. What that allows you to do is open up content from around the world, or when you go abroad, access the content you're enjoying here. That is TV shows, movies, streaming services, sporting events, whatever it might be. And crucially, it does protect your data. It protects you when you're surfing the internet. This is important because I've seen people go across the world, they log into public Wi-Fi, they get hacked. And people, I know, yes, let's be frank, NordVPN are sponsoring this and that helps the channel and that's great. But I don't promote things I generally don't use. NordVPN's on my phone, it's on my iPad, it's on my laptop, it's on Sheroy's as well. We've talked about this because for the price of a cup of coffee per month, you're protecting yourself around the world and you're opening a whole new world of content. I genuinely I use it. I can't recommend it highly enough. Everyone go check out NordVPN. I'll do the actual read, but I know Sheroy, you want to say a little something on it.
But you know what I was thinking? I'm not just saying it. It's actually mad value for money. Like if you're saying it's like the price of a cup of coffee for month, like the amount it actually makes my life so much more convenient and protects my security on my phone. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, totally agree. And we will do the read, but you should know that to get the best discount of NordVPN, go to nordvpn.com/the Goonerverse. Our link will also give you 4 months extra on a 2-year plan. There's no risk because there's a 30-day money back guarantee. So people who don't like it, just get your money back. Like that's how confident they are that you're going to enjoy the product. That's how confident I am that you're going to enjoy it as well. The link is in the description below. And we'll put it as a pinned comment as well, people. All right. There you go. Everything you need to know about NordVPN. Let's get into the football. Now, normally we would waffle on for 17 minutes or so with all the stories. We've talked a bit about Mackies. We've talked a bit about NordVPN. And I love the stories, people, and keep them coming because they have us howling. But I've got to be honest, there's so much news. There is so much news. Just I've got the notes here because people don't know this, Sheroy. So you ask me at whatever time of the day, you'll go, so what's on the agenda for today? And you leave it quite late because obviously anything can happen. And it's a good thing you do because things do happen. So we'll talk about a potential Kai Havertz injury setback, the potential of Pep Guardiola leaving at the end of the season, the 115, whether that's got any impact or has had any impact on this. The Athletic claim no. The fact that Maresca could be the guy going there. A Ben White injury too. Do we want reinforcements? Carabao Cup draw, looking ahead to that. Everton and whatever else. I wanted to touch on Mainoo briefly because I think that's a player we should be looking at. But look, I'm actually going to ask you, mate, where I think we'll leave Everton to last because it's kind of like the last thing going into the weekend. Obviously, this is a roundup show. This is a news podcast in which we're rounding up all the week's news and getting your thoughts, Sheroy. Where do you want to start? Where are you feeling like I really need to come in on this conversation?
Today, the news of the day for me was this Maresca and Pep business.
All right, let's do
it. For me, that can really change the landscape of the league. And a lot of the conversations that I saw online were, one, Arteta must do it this year because we can't have him perhaps winning a title after Pep leaves, because then basically he's lost the war if he hasn't already, given the amount that Pep has beaten him and everyone else over the years. But there was also the argument that, is it going to impact the way in which City treat this title race now? I don't know if he's confirmed to anyone inside the club that he's leaving. I mean, at this stage, it's just people planning for life without Pep, which I think is fair given the length of his contract. But imagine, did you read the line from the Athletic, into that dressing room?
Sorry, we're slightly out of sync, so apologies for audio listeners. The line in the Athletic was that sources that don't want to be revealed have basically come and said that there's a growing feeling that Pep Guardiola is going to leave, and that they remain anonymous because of maintaining relationships and stuff. Like it was quite a blunt line on like this is hush hush, but we're feeling like Pep's going to go. It was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there was a part of me that was actually surprised when he signed his new contract for the length of time that he did. I thought at that point it would just be a 1-year extension or whatever. I know that there's been a lot of discourse about the timing and trying to sort of rally the troops because it was amongst the 115, and a lot of people said that he did that to sort of instill a sense of faith in the club and stability, and I do understand that. But imagine that guy has told his players this year, he's gone in and said, listen, this is my last year here. We didn't do it last year. You're going to do this for me. How does that impact the way in which they perform? If is Foden playing the way he is at the moment because he wants to give Pep his final send off? Is Haaland? I mean, Haaland does the same every time he plays. But there are a lot of ways in which we can look at this, right? I don't know what your overarching feeling was when you heard that, but I actually was in the sort of, I really want to win it this year even more now camp. That's the way that, not that I didn't want to win it a lot before, right? But it really galvanized me.
100%. We want to beat Pep Guardiola's Man City to it. And look, I understand the narrative, which I've driven myself, that they're not the Man City of old. I hear that, but they're still Pep Guardiola. They're still Erling Haaland. They're still a side that I think have invested 300 to 400 million in 2025. I might be wrong, but it's something along those numbers. Like, they have spent a lot of money in this calendar year. So you're not coming up against jokers. And to beat them would be exceptional. I feel like Mikel Arteta's story has to be that he left Pep Guardiola as his assistant manager and came to Arsenal and took them to the title to beat Pep. I feel that's the story he needs to have. Now, easier said than done, but and just because he leaves doesn't mean suddenly it becomes easier to do, because Arne Slot came in and won the league with Liverpool. So there's no guarantees. But, you raise an interesting point. Like, what was my first thought? Like, when that happened, what was the first thing that went through my head? And I did really address this properly in my Goonerverse news video. But I can't lie to you all and pretend that I didn't think 115. I did. My immediate thought was, I swear he just signed a new deal. That was November last year. Now, cool, that might have been to see out this year and do a second year. Like, it was probably always in line with that. If he leaves in the summer of 2026, that would have been 10 whole years he did. So there is, of course, a degree of, it makes sense for the 10 years. It makes sense for where he is and what's maybe next for his career, what's next for Man City. 10 is like a nice place to stop. However, there was a little part of me that went, is this all a little too coincidental? And I know The Athletic, they said quite categorically, there is nothing to indicate that the two are linked, that the 115 and potentially, by the way, potentially leaving is linked. There's a little part of me that just thinks, I don't know. I don't know. Like, something that feels a bit off about it. But that's just an opinion. That's not me talking facts. Well, what do you think?
When the charges were announced and he was getting asked about this weekly, right, he sat there and said, look, I've had very, very candid discussions with the owners and I've been assured that we've done nothing wrong and I believe these guys, because I think he used the line that Arteta likes to use, I have the best owners in the world or whatever, right? So if it transpires that the judgment has now been passed over to the club and they did do something wrong, maybe he's then looking at the owners and going, well, I don't believe you now. And this seems like a natural juncture for me to say goodbye. And I've actually, if I leave now, I've left the squad in a pretty decent place. It's in the midst of a rebuild. They look like they've got some really good raw materials. They've got some decent young players. They've got some decent experienced players. It's not like when certain managers go out on a high, but they've just left an aging squad behind that someone else has to totally rebuild. I think if someone comes in, particularly another of his disciples, someone like Maresca, for example, I think he'd do very well there. So in many ways, it kind of makes sense. And the narrative's mad, isn't it? Like, you have Arteta versus Pep. Pep steps away, Maresca goes in there. Maybe it's Arteta versus Maresca. I mean, the storyline for next season could be pretty interesting. But there's still no indication of when this judgment's going to come out, man. Like, I would be very, very surprised. I've said this to you before. I'd be very surprised if it hasn't already been communicated to the club and the Premier League. And they're maybe at this stage trying to keep it under wraps until the end of the season. Who knows? This is just me guessing. But it's one of those things that everyone kind of forgot about until recently, when there were a couple of articles again dealing with the timing of it. And it is sort of bubbling now, particularly with this Pep news.
But why? Like, why would... So if they are keeping it till the end of the season, that would mean that there is obviously no impact this season. So basically, we're not going to see Man City suddenly have 10 points less, and they're going to go, well, don't know. That's never going to happen. Like, so clearly, any punishment would be to a view of it starting at some other point in the season. Which I have to say, if that's true, also they might be innocent, but I think they'd be quite quick to announce that, wouldn't they? They'd want to come out and say, "Yep, did nothing wrong." Or they haven't heard. But wait, you did say this before. Why are you so convinced they've heard?
There are certain things I can't quite say on camera, but I have it on pretty good authority. I have it on pretty good. Yeah, I told you this after we stopped recording. That's why you remember it from a couple of weeks ago. But look, I have it on relatively good authority. If you want. No, it's fine. It's fine. I can word it amicably enough, because it's nothing. It's not like any information that people are meant to be privy to. But those that were working on the case, they were expecting judgment over the summer. They hadn't been told that it would be over the summer, but that was their hunch, and people that were quite close to the case. So for me anyway, in my experience, if you're expecting something over the summer, it would be very, very unlikely for it not to have at least been disseminated to the parties by December. Now, maybe one of the reasons as to why people aren't going public with it, and this might have been the authorities themselves may have said this judgment is embargoed until a particular amount of time, so you can't go public. That happens quite often. But also, if there is some sort of penalty, whether it's points or whatever, if it is something that could impact the competition of the season, I don't think they would want to implement it mid-season, because it does sort of then question the credibility of the eventual winner. Whereas if they can do it at the outset of a season, at least people then know what the deal is from game week one. right? And that has a bit more credibility than just taking 10 points away from someone in December. Even though I know they do it mid-season, and they have done it mid-season before. I just think with a club that's involved in a title race, it's slightly more difficult to do. But again, this is all just me spitballing here. I don't know any of this. This is just my instinct.
Well, my feeling on the point sanction is it called a sanction? No, what's it called?
Points deduction.
Yeah, points deduction mid-season is. I remember when Everton and Forest had theirs, and they're the only two, as far as I'm aware. Or did Leicester?
I can't remember.
I think it was just those two. And I remember a lot of the rhetoric and conversation around it was, have they done it because the three in the relegation battle looked so set to go down, like the three in the relegation zone, looked so obvious that they were going to go down. So doing it mid-season meant that they made a point without impacting their current campaign or the next campaign. Now, maybe that might sound inconsistent with the City thing, but actually it could be very consistent. Let City, who are in the thick of a title race right now, compete. I mean, you've got to think broadcast revenues, everyone wants a title race, right? Look, Villa could absolutely last a distance, but the feeling amongst most is that they won't. And if Man City deducted 10 points, whatever it's going to be, then suddenly, like, you're thinking viewing figures, you're thinking all these things, you're thinking about whether it's unfair on City, whatever it might be. So they might say, look, they are competing, let them, compete, and we'll implement it start of next season when it's kind of like, look, you knew this from the start. People, we need to stress this. We're guessing. We are purely just speculating. We're throwing out ideas. We don't know what's going on. Sheroy he's not just saying things for the sake of it. These are informed opinions, and me, it's an informed opinion on what I've seen, but we don't know anything. We'll see. I imagine we're not going to hear anything till the end of the season because this has dragged on and on and on. And I don't know why they do this near Christmas. And I don't know why they would then do it at the beginning of the season. I think at this rate, they'll see out the campaign. So let's bring this back then to Pep and Maresca and just deal with the facts at hand. Pep Guardiola could be leaving the end of this season. Let's say it's tying the bow neatly on a 10-year stint in which he's got 6, maybe 7 Premier League titles, a Champions League, a treble, a load of other trophies and accolades there too. What do you make of Maresca as the potential replacement? And what do you think that means for Chelsea? What do you think that means for Maresca, how he's valued and rated? What do you think of him as a manager? Because let me make it very clear, someone who just praised Arne Slot for coming in post-Klopp and winning the league is a more competitive place without Pep Guardiola, in my opinion. I think he's had such a hold on this league for 10 years that it becomes a touch easier when you're not facing him week in, week out. But Maresca's a good manager. What's your thinking?
I actually think Maresca's better than good. I've always been impressed by him. I like the way that he deals with the media. I like the fact that he's quite tactically astute. I know Chelsea fans will point at a number of perhaps mistakes with personnel and having faith in players that he perhaps shouldn't have faith with. But I don't think people are going to laugh when I say this because of the amount of money that Chelsea spend. But I don't think being the Chelsea manager is actually a very easy job at all because of what they spend their money on. If you're looking. Yeah, I mean, if they're going out and they're spending that money on Declan Rice, for example, or Erling Haaland, then you sit there and go, okay, fine. But they're not, are they? They spend their money on a lot of players, a lot of young players, and it does operate like more of a business. And I think that any manager that even is able to win something like the Club World Cup with that relatively young squad or whatever is actually, he's worth praising. I like his style of football. I like his temperament. And I think that given the tools at Man City that he will inevitably have, because yes, Guardiola might be going, but those owners ain't going nowhere. So given, and neither are a lot of those players. So I think given those tools, he could be a real problem. But also, it's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously Man City it has its allure. It has its financial allure. And now they've actually got, a relatively, look, they've got an attractive recent history. They're a fantastic club, but I don't think you can overlook the allure that Pep Guardiola has. A lot of players come to that club to play for Pep Guardiola. I'd be interested to see if someone like Maresca is able to do the same. That's the only thing that I think remains to be seen in terms of the off the pitch stuff. But hearing the rumblings that Maresca's not quite happy, and in fact, I've been reading bits today that suggest it wasn't just over the last couple of weeks, that there have been tensions over the summer with regard to the transfer window and the model and what he said he needed and what he didn't get. And I think ultimately he's getting to the point where he's like, I don't need this shit, you know. And we'll see how that transpires.
Yeah, I think he's someone whose stock has definitely risen since he's gone to Chelsea. You know, there was a good reputation as a coach at Man City. By the way, I say that after hearing of him at Leicester. This wasn't something I was particularly aware of before necessarily. But, you know, there was a reputation there, did well with Leicester, got them promoted. And with Chelsea, look, you said he's a very, very good manager, or very good manager. Sorry if I'm paraphrasing a little bit. But I think he is a good to very good manager. And it's so interesting that a lot of the things I've been critical of sound like, if you're doing 1 + 1 = 2, sounds like a lot of things he's been frustrated with himself and feels are somewhat forced upon him. So when they lost at Leeds and they rotated heavily, I'm thinking, what are you doing? Come on, you got momentum. This is crazy to me. You lost Caicedo, you go do that. All these red cards, whatever it might be. But then you hear that he's got frustration around his supposed rotating, if that's what he's alluding to. I don't know quite how straight he was in saying that, but like there's a suggestion that he's not happy with some of the things that are asked of him from above. The squad building, you know, losing Madueke to bring in Garnacho. I mean, they've signed the worst player. They sold a player and signed a worse one. Like that must be really frustrating for him. And then suddenly it's, hey, this 18-year-old's a star, make it work. And he's thinking, well, I've got to manage him properly as well. So when he doesn't play great against Leeds and against Arsenal, suddenly the world looking at it, he's going, well, you took away Madueke from me. So I think there's a frustration there from Enzo Maresca for sure. And I think if Chelsea, who have good money, and by the way, sell brilliantly as a club, that's one thing that goes really under the radar. They sell really well. I think if they were willing to invest in even a bracket to 27, 28-year-olds and say, we'll give you a few more win now players, I think Maresca would say, I'll stick it out. I think he would. I think there is something brewing there. But I think if that model's not going to change, he'll go, well, serial winners, Man City, are asking me to come in and pick up what Pep Guardiola's left off. I think he'll find that a very attractive proposition.
Who wouldn't, man? My God. I mean, imagine you inherit
Would
the squad
Arteta?
now. I think that Arteta's love for Arsenal actually runs a lot deeper than people think. And I think out of nothing other than loyalty, he wouldn't manage another club in England. Some might call me naive, some might say money talks, but ultimately, mate, he gets pretty well paid at Arsenal as well. It's not like it's not like this is the prince versus the pauper. You know, the Cronkies are also very, very rich owners, and that's just me. Maybe I take too much of what he says at face value, but I really do think, as cliche as it sounds, the guy bleeds red, he doesn't bleed blue. And I think if he manages elsewhere, it's outside of this league.
I think he would. I just don't think he'd go from Arsenal to City. So
you think he'd go there later in his career?
Yeah, I think he would manage Arsenal till he felt time was up for him. I think he would then manage a PSG and a Barcelona. He's got ties to those clubs. And I think he'd come back to the Premier League with Man City. If the money was still there, the club still had that ambition, still had that drive, no reason to say they wouldn't. Yeah, I think he would. I think he'd actually manage most teams. I think he'd love to manage Liverpool. I think he'd love to. Like, he's not going to Tottenham. Like, and I think that's the only club where we'd be like, maybe Chelsea would be like, oh, don't do that. But I think if he went off, did another 2-3 years at Arsenal, did 3 years in Paris, did 4 years in Barca, and then came back sort of 8 years later, I think would we stomach that as a fan base? I mean, maybe. I don't think we'd love it, but I think he would do it.
Yeah, you know what? Time does funny things, bro. Time does funny things.
Bro, Mourinho, I would, even in 2015, I'd have gone, not a chance he ever manages Tottenham.
I know. I hear you. Maybe it is me being a bit naive. Maybe I do just want to think that he's an Arsenal man through and through. But yeah, okay. I mean, he definitely wouldn't go straight there. But look, bro, who's to say that City are stood up there at that moment in time? We don't know. I mean, we don't know if they've done anything wrong. And I'm a big believer in sort of innocent until proven guilty. But there has been sort of discussion and people are skirting around it, but there is discussion about, is something like demotion on the table, for example. And if you're talking about 8 years later, the Premier League could look very different, bro. What did the Premier League look like? What did the Premier League look like 8 years ago? It looks very different to the way that it looks now. So a lot can change. I
could see Arteta managing Everton one day as well, but
yeah, maybe actually.
Yeah.
Maybe.
All right. Well, I think we went into that in some good detail, to be fair. Enzo Maresca 115. Just to reiterate one more time, people, we don't know that Man City are guilty. We don't know anything. We don't know if they've had a verdict, when they will announce that verdict, or what's going on. We don't know if Pep's situation is related. We don't know if Maresca is genuinely unhappy at Chelsea. We can only work with what's being said. We can speculate and then tell you all to make your own mind up, but go read the facts and make decisions for yourselves. We are just discussing it from the level at which we understand it all. Okay, that's the longest segment of the pod. I'm glad you came in with that, because that was pretty important. Look, Ben White is out for 4 to 5 weeks. Kai Havertz has reportedly had a setback. But in my reaction on Goonerverse News, I did say that, and sorry I keep looking this way, it's where my notes are. I did say that a lot of people online are really disputing this. And I don't know, not even ITKs, big accounts or people are like really pushing back hard on this, which I'm like, what do you know? You don't normally see that kind of reaction where people go, nope, not true. Absolutely not. No, he's fine. I'm thinking, well, why do you think that? And also what's strange about this report, I mean, credit to Ihsan Khan, he's a journalist, he's had good information over the years, but what's strange about it is he says that this setback happened in November. And it's going to keep out to mid-Jan, which is another month away. So in my head, I'm like, so what possible setback happened in November that's kept him out a further 2 months from that point on? Something doesn't sound right. So what's your reaction to this Kai news? And what's your reaction to Ben White as well?
The Kai news, when I read it, bro, everything that I understood anyway before today was that he was expected back sort of end of December, after the setback that was reported on international duty. I'm not going to sit here and speculate about what the setback is, but the article today said, well, he'll be back early to mid-Jan. Early Jan's in about 2 weeks, bro. There's not that much difference between end of December and early Jan, really. I think a lot of people are reading it and sort of maybe making news out of nothing, but it could just be an extra week or two on the timeline that was initially set after that setback.
I respectfully disagree. Now, someone did make that comment in the Goonerverse news vid, and I nearly replied, but I thought this might come up. Like, the reason I respectfully disagree is I agree if, say, he's back like 3rd of Jan when we play Bournemouth, I think. But he was meant to be back mid-November, which was 3 months. Where we are 18th of December or 19th when this is out is 4 months on from his injury, because he got injured on the 17th of August. Mid-Jan, let's just call it exactly mid, 15th. That's a 5-month injury. Like, for me, there is quite a bit to like catastrophize about here a little bit. Like, what do you mean it went from 2 to 3 months to 5 months out potentially? Even if it is okay, the 10th, like that's still like a whole heap of games away. I think we play 9 games between Everton and then a month later, the 20th of January. So I'm not as relaxed about it in that kind of, well, it's actually only a couple of weeks more. I think if he has had a setback, that's pretty concerning.
Yeah, look, I mean, you're looking at it through the lens of the injury in its entirety, right? I'm just looking at what I expected when I heard the news of the setback. But sure. if you look at the way that we're bringing players back this season, look at Saliba recently, for example. I'm telling you now, if this was 2 years ago, Saliba would have played a lot earlier than he did. But because there are other options, we don't take the chance anymore, right? Especially because we have players going down. I don't think it's any coincidence that Kai Havertz coming back slightly later has also been announced after Gabby Jesus has come into the team, and people are saying, oh, should he be starting after Victor Gyökeres has come back? If it was just Mainoo that was fit, for example, then maybe you don't hear this Kai Havertz news, and maybe he is back now or the end of December. Who knows? Again, it's just speculation, but that's where I'm going with it, because that's the way I think the club operates at the moment. And if we do pick up another unfortunate injury in the striker position, I would not be surprised to see Kai Havertz back a bit earlier than that article today said.
That's a great point. Like, basically, maybe it was never a setback. Maybe it was just, or maybe there was a little setback, but they ultimately went, look, we can give him 2 extra weeks here. Like, why not? That's a good point. I mean, they need to fill out that bench. And when they fill it out, they've got to leave players out. So that's a good point. We haven't even touched on the fact that Max Dowman got injured. He could be out for 2 months. So we hope he's okay. But he was someone who's getting the odd minute here and there, especially in the cup games. So disappointing for him. We obviously hope he's okay. 2 months and a challenge, I think, in the Arsenal 11 versus Man United 11. We won 3-0, but yeah, anyway, I hope he's all right. I don't think Kai Havertz played in that game. I didn't read anywhere that he had. So, okay. And Ben White, like, you know, I don't want to be too hypocritical. Like, I expected him to start the game against Wolves. My thing was, though, like, I thought Saliba wasn't fit. So I thought we didn't have a choice. You have to play your 4 fit defenders, White, Timber, Nketiah, and Lewis Kelly. But the minute Saliba was fit and declared to start, I thought, okay, well, no, now you did have a choice, Mikel, because you've got 2 things wrong here for me. Lewis Kelly had to start because you start him and therefore rest Saliba because White and Timber play, or that's your opportunity to take White out and put Timber back to right back. So White's not playing a 4th game in a row. So one of those, for me, he hasn't managed perfectly, if I'm really honest. I don't need to be a physio to know that. Lewis Kelly was fit on the bench. He should have played this game, especially with Calafiori returning for Everton a week later. So that's my frustration there. But I also think, whilst White, brilliant cross to Marino, great header against Brentford, clap, 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 great overlapper, gives us a lot of right back. I think he should have been playing a lot of these minutes at centre-back. So we don't move Timber from his position where he's been comfortable, and we're not getting him constantly sprinting and straining that hamstring. Even if long-term you still want him as a right-back option, just get him into build-up, get him at centre-back, just get him just with players around him and ease him to that. I don't know. What do you take on that? Am I being too harsh?
No, man. And the thing is, why take a risk with a defender when you're is the area that is currently hit with an injury crisis? You know, that's the reason a lot of people are catastrophizing here. If it wasn't for that, I think people might be able to stomach it a bit more. But there was an alternative. There was a viable alternative here, and that's the issue. And one of the reasons why it really struck me is I think it was actually the press conference just before that game. Unless I'm wrong, it might have been a midweeker. But Arteta was asked about the injuries, and he said, "Look, because we have so many injuries, we have to overload other players because we don't have much of an option, and you create this sort of vicious cycle of people coming in and people being out." But the point here was this one you didn't have to do, and it's clearly something that's on your radar. So I don't know why you did it. I was so confident that Lewis Skelly would start. I put him in my bloody fantasy team that week because I thought not only would he start, I thought we were going to keep a clean sheet. I thought it was a no-brainer. But looking at it through mismanagement of Ben White's injury is one thing, but for me, that maybe says something about the faith the manager has in Miles and his form at the moment. We have been saying that we thought that Miles would perhaps get a lot more minutes than he has, and we understand that Calafiori has done well, but Wolves at home, do not start him Wolves at home, particularly when Saliba's back into that back 4. I looked at that and I thought, I don't think the manager's quite or as convinced as he perhaps was last year. And I understand that there is a slight difference in Lewis Skelly's form, obviously. If you look at Lewis Skelly against Real Madrid and you look at Lewis Skelly against Bayern Munich this year, for example, there are stark differences there. But I think that's natural when it's a young man who's not only sort of learning his trade on the job, but it's someone who doesn't have the rhythm because he's not getting the minutes. That's why that starting role there made a lot of sense to me. I think we could have definitely avoided this one. There are so many injuries this year, bro, where I go, you know what? Not much we could have done about that. But this one is arguably one of the worst.
Yeah, in terms of the management of the situation, I totally agree. So I want to read you out the Arsenal squad, and we're going to just say whether they've had an injury or not this season. David Raya, no. Kepa, yes. Tommy Setford, I don't know. William Saliba, yes. Christian Mosquera, yes. Ben White, yes. Pierre Nketiah, yes. Gabriel, yes. Jurien Timber, yes. If you include pre-season where he had surgery and wasn't.
Well, he had a knock that kept him out for a few days quite recently as well, right?
Yeah,
so,
right.
It's an injury. Yeah.
Calafiori, yes, in pre-season. Miles Lewis Skelly, no. So everyone but Lewis Skelly in that back four has had an injury in some capacity from when we've returned since the summer. Martin Odegaard, yes. Christian Norgard, yes. Ethan Waneri, no. Mikel Merino, no. Martin Zubimendi, no. Declan Rice, no. He's come off the pitch a few times with a potential injury, but no. Bukayo Saka, yes. Gabriel Jesus, yes. Everett, no. Gabriel Martinelli, yes. Victor Gyökeres, yes. Leandro Trossard, yes. Noni Madueke, yes. Kai Havertz, yes.
There you go. It's the entire squad, bar a handful.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
All right.
But through all of that, we're knocking about mid-December, top top of the Premier League and top of the Champions League, right? I always want to keep reminding us of that because it's so easy for us to get caught up in all of this negative shit. And it's valid conversation, and I understand why it makes people feel negative, but I always try and just offer some perspective and say, look, I know that this could lead to problems down the line, which is why we're talking about it. But at the moment, we've been dealing with it as well as I think any squad could.
Yeah, sorry, Turkish just called, and I think it disrupted my internet a little bit for a second. So, not sure what he's up to, but let me drop him a message.
Pick it up, put him on speaker, and don't tell him.
Should we get him on the call?
If he says something outlandish.
Recording with Sheroy. You all good? Let's see if he's all right. Because I asked him for the link for Big Six. I'm making an appearance on Big Six. By the time you guys are watching this, you'll know that. So let's see what he says. All right, back to it, Sheroy. We've talked about the injuries. Where do we go from now? I think we talked transfers. I think that's a natural kind of move in. I know last week we really tackled the concept of we've got injuries. Do we therefore go and sign players in those positions? I think I'll ask a week on, has your position changed at all in terms of like whether the defence is more of a need than the midfield? It has.
Yeah, and I think you were already there, weren't you? You were probably right last week. And I've come around since looking at the Ben White injury. One thing I will say about the January window, bro, the January window, as they said in the documentary, right? It's either something that is a responsive window where they have to act because of something unforeseen, or it's because they didn't do the business in the summer. Far too often, it's because they didn't do the business in the summer. This isn't really one of those windows for me. I'm not looking at areas of this squad going, you've absolutely shafted us here. But given what's happening at the back, bro, if the second half of the season looks anything like the first when it comes to the injuries at the back, then of course we need reinforcements. And I know that you put out a video and a lot of people laughed at the names that you listed, but then there was an article written about it and quite a few of those players appeared in the article. Right. It just goes to show that it's not that ridiculous to be discussing signings of defenders. But even though we have quite a few, I know a lot of outsiders looking in might laugh, but I think Arsenal fans deep down know that it's not actually, it is quite sensible to reinforce. And it also goes to the heart of everything I think they tried to do in the summer, which is we cannot leave any stone unturned. We don't want to leave anything to chance this year. You know, if you're looking at the way the first half of the season has panned out, it would be silly not to try and prepare for the possibility that it could happen in the second. And for that reason and that reason alone, I do think we need to prioritise a defensive signing.
I totally agree with you, man. And also, what was interesting is about that video that I did was the response. So obviously, if you're all watching this, you're here on the Goonerverse. I did a 5 defenders Arsenal could sign this January. And look, let me come clean now. Was it the most research I've ever put into a video? No, I wasn't there for hours and hours and hours scouring every potential defender across Europe or across world football to understand who the best player at the best price was. I don't claim to be a scout or have that kind of insight. But I wanted to talk about 5 that we could sign if Arsenal moved in a certain way and if Arsenal wanted to be proactive. And look, there were 3 players there. Arnau Martinez, Diomande and Xhaka, who have been linked to Arsenal fairly heavily before. There were legitimate links there, and it wouldn't have surprised me if Arsenal would sign them at any point. I chucked Mark Gahey in there, who's a long-term target of Arsenal's. We had looked at him, and people go, no, he only wanted the Liverpool move. It's like, okay, does he definitely want that now? You know, things change very, very quickly. And it maybe a year and a half ago, when Klopp had left and Slot was arriving at the club, Arsenal would have been seen as the more attractive proposition at that moment. So things change quickly in football. And if he thinks he's got the chance to go play in the Champions League ahead of the World Cup, maybe be a part of a title-winning side, who's to say that we can't knock on the door when there's 5 months left on his contract and see if we can do a deal? Like, I don't think that was a ridiculous suggestion, right? That Mark Gahey could be someone we go pick up. For what it's worth, I don't think Palace would take anything other than silly money because of the season they're having. And I ultimately think he will be happy to stay, to keep playing ahead of the World Cup. Tino Livramento was just like a throwaway. It was like look, we're not going to get him. I know we're not. But a big club looks at a player of his quality playing for a club that don't look like they're going to get Champions League football and is proactive and says, we'll pick him up because he's different to anything we've got. He's a class act. And I think he'd add a lot to this team. So all I was saying was, if Man City went and got Livramento in January, would any of us be surprised? Absolutely not. So why can't we be a part of those conversations? Though admittedly, it's one for the summer, if at all. So that was basically my take on those two who are a little bit more out there.
Yeah, bang on. And this is absolutely no disrespect to Ben White whatsoever, right? Because I rate the player, but I was having this conversation with a friend of mine. He's a Chelsea fan. I was actually having this conversation with him a couple of years ago, and he said there is just something that tells me that the first defender out of this batch that you have that's going to get moved on by Arteta will probably be Ben White, just because of the way I see your team developing, the way I see the tactics sort of maybe evolving a little bit away from what Ben White offers in many ways, and that taken with his injuries, I don't think it actually would surprise me if we brought someone in. I know, and it's sad to say, but I say that also because I'm not entirely sure Ben White is happy being second fiddle to Jurriën Timber either. I know that defenders will inevitably get a lot of minutes in our team because of the injuries and the competitions we're in, but I can't quite shake that comment that he made when he won man of the match, and he said, there's a lot of players on our bench that don't get a minute that could start elsewhere. You know, there is a part of me that I don't think he meant it in any sort of spiteful way. I don't think he was being resentful, but I do think that there was just an undertone of, I would want to be playing more, which is perfectly understandable, bro, because he could start at a number of other clubs, right? And even though he's not one of those guys that loves football in terms of watching it outside and stuff, he's definitely someone that loves playing, man. Yeah, anyway, that's my 2 pence.
If Ben White left, do you think he's justified his £50 million signing?
Yeah, man. I mean,
so too.
Bro, I know this is going to sound silly, but look around the league and look at what 50 million gets you. I mean, this is a guy that came in and look, he played a huge part in us sort of making sure that top four wasn't even a conversation, and he played a part in at least one title challenge, if not more. So yes, I do.
And it happened in the year when Liverpool signed Konate, Man United signed Varane, Tottenham signed Romero, maybe Chelsea brought in a centre-back. And I personally think he's outperformed all of them. I include Romero in there, who I know has won a World Cup and has been very good for Tottenham. But I think the level Ben White has got to for Arsenal in a team that has actually challenged for the title, gone to semi-finals of Champions Leagues and whatever. Like, I know it's just a shame he doesn't have a trophy. I hope he gets one this season if he is to leave. And by the way, I would give him another year. I think last season he got injured really around the second half of the campaign, really. He was kind of available for most of the first half. And then it's really been this campaign that's kind of been mild with injuries properly, from like start to where we are now. And even then he's been able to come in and out of the team a little bit. So I would give him next season. But, it's up to him.
I'm not saying that I want him gone. I'm just saying that it wouldn't surprise me if that's what happened.
It wouldn't surprise me either, man. At some point, Arsenal need to make money on the top players they've got. So if someone comes in and offers 35 million for Ben White, 35 million for Trossard, as much as I rate these players, I think we start to do it and we replenish. But then I want us to go get the Semenyos and the Livramentos of this world. Reinvent your squad, do something different. Let's see. Okay, so a couple more things to touch on then, as we're on transfers. Super quick. If Kobbie Mainoo's available, would you do it?
In a heartbeat.
Me too. I think he is class. I think he's absolutely class. Adam McCullough, I've had the pleasure of being on the club with recently. I was watching a piece of content he did with the club, and he said he thinks Kobbie Mainoo is the best midfielder to come out of. Was it Carrington? What's their academy called? Is it Carrington?
I think
that's the training ground.
That's their training ground. Yeah.
Let me see what's the Man United Academy called. Name of Man United Academy.
I actually don't know this.
I don't know. I think maybe it's just Carrington. Maybe that's just what they say. Anyway, right. Like we say Hale End, but we train at London Colney. Do you get what I mean?
I don't even think it's called London Colney anymore, is it? Isn't it the Sober Realty Training Centre or something? I
think it is, yes. Yeah. I remember when we first signed that deal, and there was one tweet that went viral. Do you remember we were on that winning run? We won 16 games out of 18. Yeah. And there's that gif of the manager doing this. And the same account would keep posting Sober Realty Training Centre or whatever, with that same gif being like, what has this done for us? It was so silly. Twitter could be hilarious. So anyway, Kobbie Mainoo, you would do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, when we weren't at our best and there were players at our gaff that weren't particularly happy, the bigger lot, like Man City at the time or Chelsea at the time or even United with RVP, they came in and said, well, you know what, we're going to take him then.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna flex and we're gonna take him. Then we could do exactly the same. I mean, look, that guy has got family members turning up to Old Trafford wearing like free Kobe Mainoo shirts, like he's in prison. You know what I mean? Like because he's just not.
What
He's just not.
what was his brother doing, man? Like that. Apparently, according to Ben Jacobs, like he gave that the sign off. Apparently, Kobe Mainoo was like, yeah, fine. Look, that's just one journalist, but apparently he kind of knew about it and like didn't stop him.
Yeah. Look, and a lot of people might say, well, if that's the way he goes on when he doesn't quite get his way, do you want someone like that at your club? But people had the conversation about Isak and the way he left Newcastle. People had the conversation about Gyökeres actually, and the way that he was like, bro, I'm not training. Like, you need to sell me. These players ultimately have finite careers, and I kind of understand that they're going to do what they got to do to get their move if they want one. But it's not just because I hate Manchester United and I want us to flex. I really do think that he is going to be a brilliant midfielder for years to come. And it's also an area of the pitch where I really do think we need that age profile and that player profile. And I think he really could contribute to the success of the team. I know they'd want money for him, but as things stand, money ain't really our problem.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Arsenal have money to play with if they want. Arteta said if there's an opportunity that they can do it. I would do the Mainoo deal. I'd go up to 60 million. I know that's a lot, but I'd go up to that fee. I think this is a guy who can play as a 6, receiving off the back four with Rice bombing up and down and cover for Zubimendi. He could play with a Zubimendi and be more the box-to-box getting forward. You can get him in the half spaces very easily. You can even play him with Rice, but Rice sits, and you have Mainoo as kind of like a more natural central midfielder gliding around the pitch with an Ødegaard or an Eze. I think he's brilliantly set up to play in this Arsenal team. Look, I don't think Arsenal are going to want to spend £60 million in January. I just don't think they are. Chelsea, though, are potentially looking at a deal. Listen, I'd be really disappointed if Chelsea, when they did that, we weren't a part of the conversation. I think we should absolutely be. When talents like that aren't happy and they're on the market and there's no clear reason not to sign them, Arsenal, be at the forefront of those convos, man.
Yeah, but the issue is, though, man, his main thing, I don't think he's beefing United. I think he doesn't like the fact that he's not playing. So if he's looking at Rice and Zubimendi, or if he's looking at like Caicedo and Enzo or whatever, he's going to be like, do I want to go to that club? Because I might.
Well, that's fascinating because I think it's an Amorim beef. I don't think it's that he's not playing. I think it's that he doesn't like the context in which he's not playing. And that's just my opinion and my interpretation of it. But he's basically said, Amorim, it's Bruno or Mainoo, and it's Ugarte or Casemiro. Mainoo's nothing like any of those. He's probably the most complete all-round midfielder of the lot. And you're basically shoehorning him into, well, he's competing with the captain, Bruno, who shouldn't even be in that position anyway. So I think he's just like, I've got no chance. Where at least with Arsenal, there's an element of, they do rotate a little bit more. He'll develop under a manager who's proved his worth in the Premier League way more than Amorim ever has. And I think there'll be more of like, I understand why I'm behind Rice and Zubimendi, and I think my opportunities will come. Not basically, what am I doing playing in this forced formation, competing with a guy who shouldn't be playing that position anyway?
Well, and he's also only competing with a guy who shouldn't be playing in that position anyway for one game a week. Whereas if you do go to somewhere like Arsenal or you go to somewhere like Chelsea, you're in all four comps, and there is inevitably going to be rotation for that reason. So yeah, he would get more minutes. I think with a lot of these guys, though, you do need to convince them that if it isn't going to be now, there has to be a pathway. And I think we could convince him of that.
I think we could. I think we could convince him of that. We don't have like young central midfielders coming through. Some people say Lewis Skelly, but it really feels like his future is at left back, though I would like to see him more in midfield. Sure. I don't know, it's going to be very, very interesting. Look, about 10, 12 minutes to go. Let's look ahead to the week, to the games. I mean, what a day of football on Saturday. Newcastle, Chelsea, City, West Ham, Tottenham, Liverpool, Everton, Arsenal. I mean, basically, if I didn't have something to be at, I would honestly be feet up all day watching football. 4 games back to back, easily. I think we'll be behind City in the table when the Everton game comes. And then there's a Carabao Cup. Palace at home with a chance of making it through to the semis to face Chelsea. Talk to me about it. Let's start with Everton, man. How are you feeling?
Honestly, good. I think we needed the week, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this team will now look like with Calafiori coming back in, with Saliba coming back in, hopefully with Trossard coming back in, with Jesus having a few more minutes under his belt, with Ødegaard and Eze and Gyökeres being a bit fresher. Because I know a lot's been made of these recent performances, but there were just a lot of games and a lot of moments in that game where I was just looking at the team and I was going, "You lot are just knackered. Like you just look leggy." And I think that obviously plays a part in the way in which your team is perceived when it comes to game management and composure, because you're just second best in really important moments. So I want all of that to be eradicated very quickly. And I know that a lot of people say you should only look at yourself and you shouldn't look at your opponent, but I am looking at the fact that I don't think they have Grealish available. I'm not entirely sure if who have they lost a couple to AFCON as well, if I'm not mistaken. They've lost some pretty important players.
Let me see. There was someone who,
I think Dewsbury Hall's out. I think Njai might be gone.
Let me have a little look. There's definitely a post about this. Yeah, no, I can't find it. Okay, sorry, carry on.
No, that's fine. I mean, I might be wrong, but I think Dewsbury Hall's out. I think Grealish is a maybe, and I think Njai is not eligible. So, look, yes, we might be second. I know a lot of people said that we may not see second again. I thought that was maybe a bit far fetched when I heard it. But who cares? I've said it before and I'll say it again, man. Like, I'm not here supporting Arsenal just because I want us to have it all our way and I want it to be easy. Like, yeah, we're in a scrap, we're in a fight. City want to put pressure on us. Cool, let's respond. This is now year 6 or whatever it is, right? This is if we're going to keep. I was going to use the word credence again. You know what? I'm not going to do it. Hold on, I need to find this comment. I'm going to try not to derail the show. Hold on, but I remember seeing this and I was like, no way. Here we go. AFC Ollie on the last video. Yeah, he goes, Sheroy's propensity versus credence count is the same as the articulate version of Troops' blood versus fam count. And I sat there and I was like, yeah, but I don't use propensity and credence like as fillers. I'm not like, yo, what's going on? Propensity. It doesn't even. But yeah, so I'm going to try not to use those words. I'm excited. I'm excited for Saturday night, bro. I'm excited for Saturday night. I want to see the performance that I thought I was going to see against Wolves, quite frankly. I want us to go, right, we've got another bite of the cherry now. This is what a lot of our fans expected of us when we were at home. Now we're just going to go and do it away with some fresh legs. And then that gives you a good amount of momentum going into what I think is actually a slightly more important cup tie than a lot of people are saying it is.
I think it's a huge few days for Arsenal, man. I think it's funny, I'm going on the Big Six in a bit. I listened to Big Steve say, you don't want to fall behind Man City. And I was like, well, that's not strictly true. We've been behind Man City, I think in 23-24. Do you remember there was a point where we won like 10 games in a row and we were still third? And we were like, when are we not going to be third? Because Liverpool and City were doing their thing. So we have clawed ahead of them before. Like, that doesn't really worry me. What worries me is building bad habits and bad momentum. So I don't want to not win at Everton when Tottenham has smashed them, Newcastle has smashed them there. Maybe they saw those as teams they could have more of a go at than us. So I don't think we're going to kill them. Actually, I do. I think we're going to win 3-0. But one of those, a bit like how City won 3-0 at Palace. Like, we'll work really hard for it, but we'll get that kind of result, I think. But I'm not too worried about falling behind City. Like I said, I just don't want bad habits. And you know, if we don't win there, then you put it down to us probably not playing very well. And if we haven't played very well, then that's a week on from Everton. And you're going, well, I thought you guys were fresh for this one. And, you know, Bruges, okay, we won, but we lost at Villa. And you're suddenly going, there's 3 Premier League performances in a row that you're not really enamoured by. And the context around them all is actually there was enough there to do a lot better than we did. So that's what I worry about, sort of a particular run of form stretching more than sort of 2 weeks, really. But Everton will be, it could be tricky because it's a Saturday night under the lights at, not Goodison, what's it called?
Hill Dickinson. The Hill Dickinson.
Yeah. So, do you have a score prediction for that before we move on to the Cup?
2-0. 2-0. I clean sheet, please. That's all I ask for. I just want to, you know how you're talking about bad habits and bad habits sort of leading to more bad habits. I want to start another clean sheet run because, look, we're never going to have the best attack in the league, quite frankly. We're not, just in terms of personnel. I don't think that's controversial. But we can have the best defence in the league, which means that we can be the most difficult team in the league to beat. And then our attack has to do slightly less. That's how we win. And that is what we've built our success on when it comes to this sort of away day. We need to get back to that. Yeah,
I think 3-0. I think Gyökeres will score.
Good.
I think we'll try and make a bit of a statement. I really hope I'm right.
Do you think Gyökeres will start? By the way, I've heard a lot of people saying that they want Gabby Jesus in.
I know I've done a lot of defending Victor Gyökeres, and I'm not really prepared to do it after how bad or poor, pick your word, James.
Yeah.
I'm not prepared to defend him massively after those performances. That performance, particularly against Wolves, Bruges, I thought he was poor, and quite a few. However, everyone pick your poison for a sec, right? If you're starting with Gyökeres, you're starting on his first away game since Burnley away. He was brilliant. His first away, and then before that was what? Newcastle away, Fulham away. Like, really good. We won those games. Man United away. And also, you can't say we were bad at Anfield. We weren't. He didn't play great. We lost, but we didn't play badly in that game. So I like trends like that. When we started with Marino at Sunderland, Chelsea, and Villa, we've lost or drawn. So I would go Gyökeres for that. When I say pick your poison, I promise you, and I love Jesus, but he can buzz around for 60 minutes at Goodison, looking really lively, doing this, that, and the other. But if he's missed that big chance, if he's skied it over the bar, if he's put it wide when he should have put us 1-0 up, we will all lose our heads again, and we'll go, Gyökeres would have buried that. Now, to be fair, at least Jesus and Marino are getting chances. I think that's something to be critical of Gyökeres for, is his movement and what he's doing, getting him in positions to actually hurt teams. But, there is that to think about too. And Marino, he's probably the one of all three that will take that chance. But then you'll find yourself camped, defending without an out ball, struggling to get up the pitch, trying to get control against Everton. And you're going, man, Gyökeres would stretch the pitch. Man, Jesus would look after the ball better. Pick your poison. And the one I'm going for is Victor Gyökeres.
Yeah, and this one's personal for me, because for some reason there's always an Arsenal game that falls when my mate has his annual Christmas party. And I'm pretty sure one of them fell around when we went 2-0 up at Anfield and they came back and it was a 2-2. There was another one where I think last year was a loss. Didn't we lose a couple around Christmas time last year? Last year was definitely a loss. We need to get this right just for my own sanity, bro, because he's the Chelsea fan I was talking to you about, and I don't want to be in that room with anything less than a win, bro. So please, for me, if you can.
So fair. All right, the cup really quickly. Listen, I think we need to go through. The convo around Arsenal really annoys me sometimes. Arteta's got to win the Premier League this year. I'm like, please, could we just relax for a second? He's still up against Pep Guardiola, Erling Haaland, and very, very expensively assembled teams. My beef with him isn't you didn't win the Premier League title. That's incredibly difficult to do. My issue is the lack of trophies. The Carabao Cup, for me, holds a lot of weight. Now, Chelsea are very good, very capable of beating us over two legs, but they're the team I would have wanted over two legs, if I'm really honest, because of their knack for rotating, because they are the less mature in terms of the age bracket. Newcastle, I think, are very secure in what they do home and away. They won the Carabao Cup last year, very physical team. City are obviously arguably the best team in the league, though I think it's us. Chelsea are very, very good. Either one, they're all going to cause us problems, but Chelsea were the ones I would have wanted, if I'm really honest. But I said about Newcastle a year ago, by the way.
So yeah, and I don't think we got a shot. I don't think we got a shot on target in the first leg. Anyway, I don't know what the score was in the second. So yeah, things can change. I know you say that you want to go through, but what does that look like for you in terms of team for that game? Because I know that Palace likely have to rotate as well because they've got 3 games in 5 days or something outrageous like that.
Yeah. All right. Super quick. Kepa in goal. Timber, Saliba, Calafiori, Lewis Skelly, or Nkapia, Lewis Skelly, but I think you can rotate one of the defenders. Ødegaard, Norgard, Marino, Eze, Jesus, Madueke.
So that's a brand new midfield, though. That really is a brand new midfield.
Well, I think Ødegaard will start Everton, and Marino's played a lot of minutes, so I don't see it as like super brand new.
Yeah, I mean, as I meant as a 3 in terms of the chemistry. If you're looking at Norgard, Ødegaard, and Marino, that goes one way or the other, right? And one thing about Palace, we know that Palace can run you ragged in midfield when they want to. I'm curious, man, because I agree. I think that when you go through in these competitions, it does just psychologically help. And as we've always said, when you get to the semi-final, suddenly you go, I kind of want to win this one, And I'm enticed by the prospect of a 2-legger against Chelsea. I want to get some retribution for the shit that just went down at Stamford Bridge, So yeah, bring it on, man. A lot to look
Yeah.
forward to this year, bro. A lot to look forward to this year.
I know. Come on, let's start it with a win at Goodison Park. Listen, everyone, big thank you for joining us. There is a little later today a short coming out on the channel, a little 2 to 3 minute previews that we're doing as a regular series ahead of every game. We're previewing games, via a short, essentially. Shout out to Ahmed, who's working with us on the Goonerverse now and doing some great edits. So big thank you to him. Sheroy, big thank you for joining. Everyone, I know we didn't do a story really this week, but we just had so much to get through. As you can see, 59 minutes. We had a lot to get through. So we did not have even 10, 15 minutes for story time.
Well,
but we are sorry about that. We did get an interesting one. You heard about the matches.
Yeah.
A reminder, people, we are going to do the read once more, but do stick around if you really love us. That to get the best discount for NordVPN, go to nordvpn.com/thegoonerverse. We can get an extra 4 months free on a 2-year plan. And there's no risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you don't like it, you get your money back. So it's honestly worth it. Like we said, content around the world, wherever you are. You want to hear where you're living, you want to surf the web abroad, or when you are abroad and you want what you're watching at home. Sport included. The links in the podcast description below. All right, big thanks everyone. Sheroy, can't thank you enough. Go check out Sheroy's voice. I know you'll be back at some point. And we've hit the hour mark. My timing is impeccable. All right.
Very well done. Very well done.
Love you all. Bye.